I got it. What's up, Gathering family? I am here again. We're back with Kyle, Jordan, and myself, Nick. And this is the Walking Together podcast. I'm glad you're listening. Guess what? We finally got a question, our first response ever, and we're excited. Yes. So we're going to spend a little time talking about it, and hang in there because it's a pretty good one.
Just pretty good?
It's very good.
Okay.
So Kyle, you want to read us our first response?
I can, yes.
And
all right.
We'll dig in.
So this is from Audra Riggins 90. I'm just kidding. It's an email, but we know it's Audra. Thank you, Audra. First and foremost, thank you for sending in a question. It makes us feel special.
You should get a prize for being the first ever
What did she get?
I don't know, but it'll come.
A brand new car! Just kidding. Your husband already won a car. He did.
What?
He won a car from Jones Onzo.
No.
Yeah, you know how Joe Mack does like a drawing every year?
Yeah.
He won one of their...
they give away a work truck every year.
He won
What?
a work truck, dude.
No way.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Cat's out the bag now.
Well,
Everybody's signing up for the
Right.
meeting.
For Joe Mack. For Joe Mack meetings. All right, sorry, go ahead.
man, Audra and Clay, two won cars.
Brand new car.
Yeah.
All right, go
All
ahead.
right. So anyway, her message was, great podcast on the gospel. John touched on the kingdom a bit. Would you consider the second coming of Jesus as part of the gospel? Is Jesus' second coming part of the good news? For me, the knowledge of Jesus' return in the kingdom age brought me close to God. I am saved by the shed blood of Christ. If I had 30 minutes to tell someone the gospel, I would include what we are saved to. I do not think a non-believer will understand biblical phrases like died for our sins. A non-believer will want to know what they are being saved from, what they are being saved to, and thirdly, why. Maybe a future podcast topic would be the second coming of Jesus. And guess what we're going to talk about today?
The second coming of Jesus.
Yeah.
That's
a good guess.
This might be a 2-part podcast because there's a lot to unpack in that comment. And so let's start at the top.
Yeah, this might even have to be like a trifecta.
You could say like a 3-person bike.
Yeah, trisectula. Trisectula.
Anyway.
I believe that's a dinosaur.
Trisectosaurus.
All right. So the first part of
Where's the
her...
laugh button, Kyle?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
Wrong one.
We have sound effects.
Da-ding-ding-ts.
All right. So her first question was, would you consider the second coming of Jesus as part of the gospel?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yeah.
All right. Next question. I'm just kidding.
Why? Because, Jesus talks about it while he was here on earth. And he says he's coming back before he leaves. Jordan, what you said John 14 was kind of
Yeah. So John 14 talks about the kingdom of it. These are in red letters, so it's Jesus speaking. John 14, verse 1, don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me. There is more than enough room in my Father's home. If there was not so, would I have told you that I am going to prepare a place for you? When everything is ready, I will come and get you so that you will always be with me where I am. And you do know the way where I am going. This is the New Living Translation. I'm going to switch over to CSB. Or we could do King James.
Do it.
No, I won't understand any of it. Don't let your heart be troubled. Believe in God. I'm starting over in verse 1. And believe in me also. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I am going to prepare a place for you? If I go away and prepare a place for you, I will come again and take you to myself, so that where I am, you may be also. You know the way where I am going. Lord, Thomas said, we don't know where you're going. How can we know the way? Jesus told him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you know me, you will also know my Father. From now on, you do know him and have seen him. Let's see. I think we can kind of stop there.
Yeah. So Jesus, and you want to know the way. You want to know you want to know the way to get to where the place he has prepared for you. And Jesus answers it by saying, just know me, just follow me, and I'll show you the way, because I am the way. So I know that I don't think who was asking, Thomas? Yeah. So doubting Thomas, right? And that's a whole nother subject about Thomas that we might get into. But Jesus I think Jesus' response was not probably what Thomas was looking for. He was probably looking for, like, show me the path or the formula.
Like a roadmap.
Yeah. And Jesus is like, thankfully Jesus handles us in a way that puts us in a humble position, and he knows what's best for us. And so instead of giving us what we want all the time, he gives us what we need, because he knows that if he were just to give a point blank answer, then you would stop following him and be hung up more on that answer.
Right.
So Jesus just says, stay close to me. Which is part of the good news, which is part of, that thankfully this life is temporary and we have something to look forward to. And, that is what gives us hope. And that is why we have faith that Jesus is going to do what he said he was going to do. Part of the unfortunate part of that is ever since Jesus left, like right as soon as he left, people started talking about, he was coming back, and people have been saying he is coming back, but they've been trying to, predict when and how. And the way Jesus answered Thomas, Jesus was like, don't worry about or get hung up on that. Just follow me.
Right. Yeah. Can't be counting blood moons, guys.
Yeah, I remember as a boy, I don't know how, let's say 10 or 12, hearing Revelation for the first time, and like you'd be riding in the car down I-40, for example, and what seemed like, you remember when you were little, and like riding to the beach when I lived in Clinton seemed like,
took forever.
A journey to cross country. And, you'd be looking out the window, and you would see the moon, and it would be red, and I remember thinking like, oh my God, is this it?
It's the end.
Dude, one of my older buddies, it's actually Larry's brother-in-law. He's he's been a Christian since he was a kid, but he said he remembered a time that he had a friend that he was just driving in his car, and like a transformer or something blew up, like a big one. It was and there was this huge flash of light in the sky, and he thought the rapture happened, and so he hauled Bud over to where this guy Roger was working. He worked at a gas station, and he ran over to go and find him. And he found him. He's like, oh, man, thank God I found you. And he's like, what's wrong? He said, man, I thought the rapture happened. And I said, if you're still here, then it didn't happen. He went. It's kind of cool. Like, he went, I would be honored if somebody tried to come and find me, He's like, if anybody was going to be taken up in the rapture, it'd be you. But,
That's a cool story.
Like, homeboy legit thought that the rapture happened, and he was left, he was left behind. That'd be a scary thought, man.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, it would. But anyway. So I don't think I answered the question, but yes, I believe it is as well. So before we started the episode, we were talking about the last episode on the gospel, and I think after listening back through it, I think that we made it a little bit too big and complex because it's simple. I mean, but it is very complex too. So as we've been sitting here talking, I've been thinking like, what would be the easiest way to understand the gospel? I mean, it is good news, right? And the best way I could think about it is, each one of us has a burden. And Jesus says, I want you, and I'm willing to carry your burden for you. And I think that in a nutshell would be the gospel. But that means you're walking right alongside of him. You don't just hand it over and, all right, deuces. And so that's kind of how I would understand even the kingdom aspect of that is being with him, walking alongside of him, walking along with him as we go through life would be, that is what kingdom is being in the presence of Jesus.
I think, and just going back to John 14, like, it is super simple because Jesus makes it that way. It's not necessarily easy, but it's simple. And the only thing Jesus asks you to do is to just follow.
Right.
And if you do that, then you'll experience some of those things he's talking about. And you'll experience that kingdom a little bit here, which propels you to keep going, run the race, as Paul says, and run it well, so that when you get to heaven, you'll know and you'll have those rewards and you'll experience that blessing. And it doesn't have, I think we make it complex because it's our human nature to want to know. Yeah. We talked about that in the podcast. Like, you just got to know. You just have this yearning and burning desire to know. And Jesus makes it super simple and says, just stay close to me because I'm the way.
Yep.
And we don't like that answer because it requires faith, right? It requires us to hope, to put our weight on something that we can't control.
Right. Right. So, because it really is simple. And the thing is, when people get involved, we always have a tendency to complicate things. But I do think that she's absolutely right, though. Like, the full picture of the gospel it's a big picture because it encapsulates so much. And I think to strip away the kingdom aspect of it or leave it out, not necessarily strip it away, but leave it out, doesn't give a full picture of the gospel either. So I think she's absolutely right.
Well, she even said right after that question, for me, the knowledge of Jesus' return in the kingdom age brought me close to God, and I was thinking about why. And it brings you close to God because I don't know about y'all, but life is hard, and life sucks if you don't have anything to hope in. Mm-hmm. And when you realize, like, this is not my home and this is temporary,
right? When
you get terminal illnesses or when you lose loved ones, like, this is only temporary. This is not who I am. And that takes all that burden away because it's not on you. And Audra can answer for herself, but I know for me in answering that question, that is what brought me closer to God, knowing that I can put my security in him and it's not all on me to figure out how everything should go.
Right. And it shows that he's truly faithful too. Whenever he promised he's going to come back, we can bank on it.
And a lot of times, people will use their circumstances to say, well, this is why I don't believe in God because he did this to me, or this is why I'm mad at God, or whatever. And just like with Thomas, he probably didn't answer Thomas's question the way Thomas wanted him to.
Right.
But if you have enough humility to ask Jesus why, or even be courageous enough to follow Jesus into what he's asking you to, you will experience that what he has to offer is eternal and doesn't go away like the things in this world.
Yep.
I think when you put your full trust into something or someone, you it's kind of like, I don't know, a lot of things that I can relate to is learning something, new for the first time. Like in the world of construction, you're building something and you might not know exactly how to do it. And it may not be something that somebody can really explain to you how to do it. You just got to be shown.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you just got to trust that person that knows and just follow their lead and do exactly what they say, even though you may not understand why you're, doing each individual little step. Just trusting that in the end, the result is going to be, what it needs to be.
Right.
And then at the end, you'll be like, oh, now I know why we did all those steps in between. Whereas while you're going through them, like, this seems like the dumbest thing to do. Like, why are we even doing this?
Mm-hmm. And,
I'm sure there's steps like that and, mechanics, working on cars and all kinds of things. But it's cool because we've been talking the past couple Sundays. Have talked a lot about this kind of stuff. Like we went through Proverbs, a couple Sundays back, and it was talking about how in the end, life is seemingly like a puff of smoke. Like it doesn't matter. It's I can't remember what word.
Vapor, vanity.
Yeah, Bobby was using the word vanity, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, vapor. And it seemed like the point in going through all the Proverbs is that life is tough. There's a bunch of, the old Forrest Gump saying is that it happens, so focusing on eternal things, focusing on eternity, the life after, since life here on earth has so many unknowns and uncertainties. If we focus on all of those things that in the end, we don't have a lot of control over those things. By focusing on eternity and our, our eternal destination place,
Mm-hmm.
Knowing where that is. And in Christ, we know that we have an eternal destination in God's kingdom of what we're talking about. That's cool. And then going into, we went through Isaiah this past week and started talking about judgment. And that's an important thing to talk about. And in Christian Surfers, last Monday, we talked about a bunch of things, but one of the things was about judgment and about how, God imprinted, the characteristics in his heart, and, he imprinted those things into us. And so we have like an inherent, whatever, word I'm trying to say. We have a nature to want to have justice,
Right.
Like when we feel like we've been wronged or someone else has been wronged, we want justice. That's why there's so many movies about redemption and, John Wick stories, that John Wick is getting justice. I'm not saying that that's the right way to go about it, but, we have this desire for justice, and part of the gospel is justice,
Right.
And part of the kingdom is justice. We have the wonderful thing about the gospel is that in the end, God has victory over the wrong things in the world, the unrighteousness, all the bad things. And, Audra said that it's hard to, say sins, because that can mean a whole bunch of different things, but all the wrongdoings that we feel and see in our world, one day, when Jesus comes back and God's kingdom comes down on earth, the Bible talks about it being a second Jerusalem. But when God's kingdom comes down, it's going to be perfect. All
Right.
that justice will be laid down, and it says there will be no more crying, there'll be no more tears, there'll be no more injustice. Everything's going to be perfect, like it was designed to be in the beginning with Adam and Eve. And I think that's good news. That's something that we can all get excited about, is that one day we have the availability to go to a place through, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. We can only get to this place through Jesus. So the good news is that we have the availability to be in a place where justice will prevail, and
Mm-hmm.
and that it's going to be an awesome place.
Absolutely. It's everything you want, like, deep in your gut.
I guess, that can be misconstrued for some people wanting some things deep in their gut, like a Philly cheesesteak, but maybe it'll be endless, all-you-can-eat Philly cheesesteak bar. But
I don't know. I've been kind of craving some wings.
Yeah. But yeah, everything that's biblically good and righteous,
Right.
like I've also been thinking a lot about, and we talked about a little bit in Bible study with Christian servers as well, about if we it can all be relative as far as what we think is good or bad or righteous or unrighteous. Like, unless we use God's word as that standard, we can have our own pictures of heaven. Somebody said that there's you probably know the country song that said something about, I guess, a friend died and he was like, go give heaven some hell or something like that.
Oh yeah.
That doesn't make sense at all. I don't know. Some people have in their mind, and you hear people all the time, talking about, hell's going to be an awesome party, and we're just going to rage it, all for eternity, or even heaven. Heaven is whatever you want it to be, and
right.
It's not. We don't make heaven, like Jesus said, I go to prepare a place for you. We don't get to make our own heaven. God's the one that's making it. We don't. If our idea of heaven is a 24/7, keg party, I don't know.
Well, I think people just don't want to submit, because that would make you God if you get to decide what heaven's going to be, and giving up control, whether people realize it or not, is what I think a lot of people get hung up on.
Yeah.
And you should read Ecclesiastes.
There's a lot of mouth noises going on there for a second.
Who was that?
I think it was me.
You got peanut butter stuck on the roof of your mouth?
I'm thinking about a Philly cheesesteak bar.
Uh-oh. I think, and we talked about Ecclesiastes a little bit because we were reading through it last week or the week before, but just, it's all meaningless because it all goes away when you die.
Mm-hmm.
And I ain't never know anybody that ain't died.
Right. Well,
and
I know of two, but they were in the Bible.
Give them to me. Besides Jesus.
Well, he did die. But Elijah.
Sort of.
Elijah
got carried
he walked
off.
with God, and then that was the other guy. Not Peleg. In Peleg's day, the earth was divided. Whatever that means. Enoch. He walked with God and was no more. There we go. That's the two. Elijah and Enoch. So if your name starts with E, you have a pretty fair chance of not dying. That's the only two people that haven't died. I don't know. That's probably not true. But
yeah, Enoch and Elijah.
Yeah. Yep. Elijah was caught up in a whirlwind of fire. That had to have been really cool.
Yeah.
And Elisha saw him.
He wasn't in Kansas anymore.
Yeah. No.
Well, I ain't ever know. I haven't ever known anybody not to leave this earth. How about that?
I mean, but that, and
not to leave the earth through via
death.
Yeah.
There's been a few people leave Earth, but we're getting in the weeds.
Yeah, we got to get out of here. Getting back to Audra's comment, something I think, it's easy for us to talk about these things because we've walked with God.
Right.
And know God. But for somebody that doesn't know God, which is part of her comment, like, I don't think a non-believer will understand biblical phrases like died for our sins.
Right.
How do you explain why you need Jesus? Why do we need saving? What difference does Jesus make?
I think that guy, Ray Comfort, does a pretty good job explaining that kind of thing. He does some cool, he does YouTube videos. I can't remember the name of the ministry or whatever, but he goes around. I think he lives in California, and I think mainly in like the Huntington Beach area. But he goes around and just talks to people, and he explains it like, the sin thing is, it's a wrongdoing, and he equates it to, he talks about like a speeding ticket. Like if you get a speeding ticket, then you have to present yourself in court, and there is a fine that you have to pay. Like for justice to be ensued, or justice to be carried out, you have to pay that fine. And so he talks about the gospel of being, you show up to court to go and pay your fine, and the judge says, don't worry, somebody has paid your fine, you're free to go, without you having to pay the fine. And, he says that's what Jesus does for us, that, we have all fallen short and done things that are against, God's will for our life, the 10 Commandments, and then, there's other commandments that go into, I think, a deeper explanation of those commandments. But, and the penalty for those, the justice for those is eternal separation from God. That's the quote unquote speeding ticket. And for us to be able to spend eternity in heaven, that fine has to be paid. And Jesus is the only one who can pay that fine. We can't pay it ourselves. And that's simply what he did for us.
Simple, right? It ain't easy, but it's simple.
I think that's a pretty simple explanation. I've always liked that. That's the one he tells people, and they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that would, in that explanation, it requires people to have some sort of moral value.
Right.
So I know a lot of times in those videos, he leads into the 10 Commandments, or do you believe good and bad? Or, a lot of people will say, that believe there is a God, or believe that me being a good person will get me to heaven. He always kind of leans into, well, let's go through the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
Have you ever lied? Have you ever cheated? Have you ever stolen anything? Have you ever lusted after another person's wife or husband? And all those things. But, then there's always some of those people that try to revert and say, well, what if I don't believe in good or bad? And another guy, I think he has a foreign name. I can't remember his name. John knows his name. I believe John's the one that showed him to me. He always comes back with, like, there's some things that are absolutely true, and when people try to take them away from you and say you can't use them, that doesn't make it true. Like, the reason we keep going in a circle and back to the truth is because it's true. And for you to say that I can't use that is not true. Meaning, like, for somebody just wanting to be contrary, or just, say, well, I want to be right. How sometimes you'll talk to people, and if you gave the analogy of the speeding ticket, and you say, well, what if I don't believe in that there's judgment that needs to be, just because we have laws here in America, what if I don't believe in them?
Yeah.
And you say, okay, well, try it and see what happens to you. You're going to end up in jail
or dead.
Yeah. And then if you don't believe and you end up dead, then it's going to be pretty hot.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a cool analogy one time about this exact topic, and it was talking about, somebody could decide for themselves that they don't believe in something like gravity. And, they say, well, I don't believe in gravity. I don't believe it exists. And so they could hold up their phone, or they could, stand at the top of a building and say, well, since I don't believe in gravity, I'm just going to, walk off this edge of this building and just float away, or I'm going to drop this and it's not going to fall to the ground. Well, just because you in your brain have decided that you don't believe in it, gravity still exists. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing that you can say or do, aside from some really cool science experiment, to make gravity not take its effect. And that's the same thing with God. Like, you can have in your brain, you can make up in your mind that God doesn't exist and that, Jesus isn't the way, the truth, and the life. But the hard truth is that everybody will have to be accountable one day. And whether or not you don't believe in this gravity, once you step off the edge, you're going to be
flat. You're
going to be submitted to that force. We're all going to be submitted to God's judgment at the end, and only Jesus' blood is what's gonna save us from eternal damnation.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next thing she mentioned was people need to know what they're saved from, what they're saved to, and why. I think we've covered the why, and I think I think we've covered all of them. But that would be, I guess, the challenge would be how you present all three of those as quickly as possible.
And I think you can do it quickly, but you kind of have to know who you're talking to,
right?
And a lot of times, that's why I've talked with you about this before, Jordan. Like that's why it doesn't come across as well on Facebook or even text message, because there's no face-to-face. It's not as personal, so you can, kind of throw these bombs over your Facebook Messenger wall and not really know or have a physical connection with a person. So doing it face-to-face makes it more personal and effective, just like any kind of communication.
Right.
And not to use that as a crutch, but just, it is more meaningful and impactful when somebody tells you something to your face other than on Facebook Messenger or text message or... I think, we've spent some time on what you're being saved to and the hope and promise, but I don't think we've talked a little bit about what we're being saved from, other than the side of ourselves. But what else are we being saved from? Meaning, I don't think people like to talk about hell a lot,
right?
Because of the consequences. And I don't know, for me, like, I think Jesus spoke as much, if not more, about hell than he did heaven when he was here ministering.
Well, he would always mention it, in the parables and stuff. He would have like a twofold side of it. And have the people that end up being saved, and then the people who end up, being thrown into the pit where there will be lots of weeping and gnashing of teeth. Mm-hmm. That would be the picture of hell.
What do you think the gnashing of teeth looks like or means? It's going to be people gnawing at each other like dogs. Yeah, it's probably going to sound like that because it's going to be, I think, and it doesn't matter,
right?
But just a picture in my mind is like people thinking, I can do what I want and I can be what I want, and then when they get there, they're going to be just gnashing and gnarling at each other because they have figured out that they were wrong.
Right. Yeah. A lot of sighing, heavy sighing. But yeah,
the Greek phrase "gnashing of teeth" literally means grinding one's teeth together.
Ooh. So you have nubs after a little while.
Yep.
Be gumming everything. But, I think that, yeah. So what makes heaven heaven? Because, the reason I ask that is because sometimes the best way to define something is to say what it's not. Heaven is presence with God, right? And enjoying all the gifts and joy that He has promised us.
It's not just a place.
Right. So what then is hell?
It's eternal separation from perfect goodness and perfect everything. It's the exact opposite of perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no justice. There's no joy. There's no
just
weightlessness from burden. I mean, there's ultimate burden.
It's funny how God like uses things, but like it takes a lot more energy to be angry and mad and wrathful than it does to be joyful and peaceful and kind and the fruits of the Spirit.
Right.
And no matter how hard people try to fight against it, it takes a lot more energy to be mad than it does to be joyful.
Absolutely.
So just a couple little descriptions of it coming out of the different Gospels, which would have been explanations that Jesus would have given to it, would be like eternal darkness, eternal flames, eternal burning, eternal torment, everlasting punishment. Those are just a couple of what the picture of hell would be.
It's not time out.
It's not a party.
Right. It's not time out. It's not a party. It is.
And so we normally don't talk about people don't like talking about things that are heavy or that have that kind of weight. You don't like talking about you're going to be eternal punishment. Who likes to be punished?
Right.
You know, and I think that's why we kind of shy away from them, because of how it makes us feel.
Right.
And sometimes you need to feel the weight of that. I'm not, everybody, I think we brought it up a little bit in the gospel conversation. You don't want to scare the hell out of people, but I don't think it's necessarily wrong or bad to let people know what it's going to be. And it should scare you. Like
right.
It should put some weight on you to think about,
Yeah, there's got to be it. If there wasn't a consequence to it, then what would be the point? Kind of like a no littering sign. You see, if you just had a sign that said no littering, like, okay, no littering, big deal. But it says no littering, $100 or $1,000 fine. You'd be like, shoot, $1,000. Okay, I won't litter.
Picking up other people's trash.
Yeah, okay, I'm not going to litter now.
Right.
So, yeah, I think there is, conveying what the consequence is of living a life without Jesus is important.
Right.
That you can't convey the gospel properly without
the seriousness,
without that aspect of it. Because otherwise then you're like, well, okay, well, I don't have Jesus and my life seems pretty good. Like I've got a good job and, I've got a family and lots of toys and, boats and, whatever. Like I'm doing good without Jesus.
Well, I think those are sometimes the hardest people to reach, because they haven't had, because there are some people that haven't had a traumatic experience or had, some people that kind of just float through life and
mm-hmm.
just, kind of blase, just, and those people to me are the hardest to have the conversation with, because they're like, well, I live a pretty good life. I do good things. Life's pretty good. Yeah. I think when I die, I'm just going to die and I'll be good.
Yep.
There's no point in me thinking about what happens after, because I have it pretty good here.
Yeah. Yeah, you could say, like, for me, Audra said that one of the things that brought her close to God was thinking about God's kingdom and Jesus' return. The thing that brought me closer to God was finding a sense of purpose, here on earth. Why am I here? Some people that that think that they found their purpose on earth without God, through their career or whatever. You can get confused by any of those things. Somebody that believes in a different eternal destination, be like, well, I believe that I'm going to do this, or I'm gonna. So it's hard. It's a tough thing to get people to wrap their brains around if they're head set on something else.
Yeah.
I think that's why Paul, says there's joy in suffering, because a lot of times, lately when I pray for people, I'll say, I pray you have an experience with God, because there's nothing I can say. How many times have you ever changed what you believe in because of what somebody else said? I can't think of any time I've changed because of listening to a debate or somebody's,
Yeah, it really only comes from experiencing it for yourself.
Yep.
And so wishing or trying to pray away what maybe God is doing to try to get that person to that point, to me, is a bad thing.
Yeah.
I've had friends that, well, not really friends, but just people that I met, along the way that have thanked God for, crazy things like their spouse, cheating on them and stuff like that, because that's what brought them close to God. They were living a life, not with God at all, and then they went through that hard time, and it brought them to God. It's like, man, I'm thankful for that. It was terrible, but I'm thankful for that.
A lot of times we limit God by our time and think, well, this person's lived a good life, and what if God is like getting that person to the point of whenever they retire from their career and realize that wasn't what fulfilled them, and then they start feeling hopeless and submit.
Yeah.
But we put time constraints on us. I don't think God necessarily cares if it takes 40 years or 60 years for a person to come to that realization, because God is personal and intimate, and God's not limited by our timeline of this life.
Right. Yeah.
And we compare, well, that goes back to the parable of the, people working in the field, and some work a certain amount of hours and some work a certain amount
Some dude only worked like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And that guy got paid the same as the guy that was there first thing in the morning.
And
I'd be a little ticked off.
So our human nature is like, well, God, I've been following you my whole life, and this guy.
Yep.
But God's not looking at
his house is as big as mine. What in the world?
God's not looking at just this time in our life.
Yep. He says better late than never.
I reckon.
Because that points back to, it's not anything we do that saves us.
Right.
Yeah,
and a lot of people take that, which is unfortunate. A lot of people take that and say, well, then, if I'm saved, I'll kind of do what I want to do now. And that ain't what Jesus said to Thomas.
Right.
He said, follow me,
Right.
So if you follow him, then things are going to change.
Yep.
Yeah, there's all kinds of interesting stuff that that follow that talk about following. If you love me, you will keep my commands. This is in John 14 as well. If you love me, you will keep my commands, and I will ask the Father, and he will give you another counselor to be with you forever. He is the Spirit of truth. The world is unable to receive him because it doesn't see him or know him, but you do know him because he remains with you and will be in you. It goes on and talks many times about, if you love Jesus, then you will, obey his commands and do what he says, instead of just this, all right, God, I trust you with my life, and then you don't follow him, you just kind of do your own deal.
Yep. So,
well, Audra, I hope we answered at least some of that question.
I feel like we did.
Yeah.
If there is one thing that I could recommend for people to do, would be to go out and buy the book Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan.
John Bunyan?
John Bunyan. Yep.
That's an unfortunate last name.
Yep. He
Wait,
yes.
was it Paul Bunyan?
No.
No, I know,
Huh?
but John Bunyan makes me think about Paul. It was Paul Bunyan, the big strong guy?
Yeah, with the big blue ox.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It always throws me off. I was about to say, Paul Bunyan wrote that book?
he chopped down trees, man. But he got beat by that machine. Y'all remember that cartoon?
No.
You're not. Yeah, that was before.
When they're doing the railroad and he's doing the railroad.
He's got that double-edged axe, and he's plowing through the field. And then there's a guy that created this machine that cuts down trees. And so Paul Bunyan had a competition of chopping down trees with this big fancy machine that some guy made. You ever saw that?
I have never seen it.
Poor Paul Bunyan didn't stand. I mean, you don't stand a chance against something like
John Bunyan would, though.
John Bunyan.
Yeah.
I didn't think about Paul Bunyan. I just thought about a Bigfoot thing.
Big Bunyan.
Big Bunyan.
But yeah, go.
Sorry,
get,
John Bunyan. I'm sure your book's amazing.
It really is, because what it does is the very beginning of the book starts out with this guy named Christian. I mean, it's all allegorical.
Does he have a buddy named Atheist?
Not atheist, but he does have a lot of. He meets a lot of people and has friends along the way who have names like Timid and yeah.
And if you're not a big reader, I think on Amazon Prime, Pilgrim's Progress is free.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's a really good book, but I feel like it kind of explains the gospel in long format, but it would give you a way to, like, if you could condense the whole story of Pilgrim's Progress, it would give you a 5-minute explanation of the gospel. Because that's kind of how Christian worded it in Pilgrim's Progress, is he had a burden that no one could help him get rid of. He couldn't get rid of it by himself or with anyone's help.
Was burden the name of a friend that he just didn't like and wanted to go away?
No.
Oh.
No. It wasn't. But yeah, it's a really cool book. Yeah, so go check that out. But
Pilgrim's
Progress by John Bunyan. But well, guys, what do y'all think? Y'all think we've answered it fairly well?
Audra, let us know if there's anything we left undone. But thank you so much.
Seriously.
First comment ever.
What does she win, Jordan?
A brand new car.
All right.
Just kidding.
If we had one, Audra, we'd give it to you.
Yeah, if we had a plethora of brand new cars to give away, we would give you one.
Yeah. So we'll figure out something, though. But as we get ready to go ahead and close on out, let this be a standard by which we live now, that we love getting your mail. Not your emails, not your mail. We don't like your mail. Keep your bills,
That's
please.
a federal offense.
It is.
Yeah, Kyle, we don't go around stealing people's mail.
Not anymore.
You used to steal people's mail?
You know, it's actually illegal to go and even place mail in people's mailboxes.
Really?
Yeah.
So all those realtors that go around and put stuff in my mailbox?
They can't put it in your mailbox. They can put it on your mailbox,
Oh.
but they can't put it in. So I used to deliver birthday cards and stuff like that, or invites. Illegal. It's illegal.
So only the mailman has the authority to stick his hand inside your mailbox?
That is it. Yeah. There you go.
Learn something new every day.
Yep. Anyway, sorry. That was a rabbit trail.
WTP.
You know it. GatheringSurfCity.com/WTP. Please go and leave us another message. Audra, we'll hand you your keys to your new car whenever we find one. But seriously, thank you, though, for reaching out. Thank you for your question. It was a really good one. And I was excited that we got to talk about the gospel again, because I don't think that's something that we can talk about enough. So, anyways, again, reach out to us at gatheringsurfcity.com/WTP if you have any questions, comments, concerns, complaints, or anything else that you want to just talk about. Just don't leave it in our mailbox. Put a stamp on it. Later, guys.
A brand new car!